All tents for camping and backpacking are the same, right? Wrong. We are going to talk about all of the differences in tents that are used for camping and backpacking and how you can actually choose the right option for you that fits your needs the best. And tonight, I'm out here on a car camping trip and we're gonna spend tonight in the Nemo Dagger OSMO 2-person tent. Tomorrow night, we're gonna set up a totally different shelter and we're gonna sleep in that and compare the differences between various shelters and tent options on the market. You'll be surprised that even though tents look the same from the outside, there are some really big differences in the subtleties of how a tent is designed that make them the right option or the right decision for certain conditions. So it's starting to get dark. We're into the tent for the night to start getting ready for bed. And one of the most important things about choosing a tent, I think, is the fine detailed design aspects that go into the tent to make it more comfortable, more functional. Now with this Nemo Dagger OSMO 2-person tent, one of the key aspects for sharing this tent with 2 people when you've got 2 sleeping pads in the tent is that you are the same width at the head end as you are at the foot end. And in this tent, you're 88 inches long and then 50 inches wide. So I can easily get 2 25-inch wide pads in here and not feel super cramped. And that's important because when you are sharing a tent, you want to have as much space as possible. And that's what I really like about this. But other design aspects, like you've got the ability to hang a lantern from the top. You've got pocket options all over the place. And in this tent, you've got pocket options here at the foot end, just all over, that allow you to get gear up off the ground. And I like that aspect to this tent. So I want to build off of this idea of design aspects in a tent. Now we've got the Nemo Dagger OSMO and the Mountain Hardware Aspect 2. These are similar in the concept that they are a freestanding tent, but when you really break down the design aspects of these 2 tents, they are quite different. The pole structure of the Dagger is a different structure than you have with the Aspect 2. Now with the Aspect, you're more of a dome style tent, meaning that you've got just a standard X style type of pole structure that goes from corner to corner, and then you've got a ridge pole or a brow pole that brings out the walls of the tent to make them a bit more vertical. But when you compare this design to this design, where you've got 2 legs that come up in a hub and then a single ridge pole and then it goes out again, you don't have that X style design, but you do have that brow pole that comes through the center of the tent. And those aspects actually make this a bit stronger of a tent design than you have with this. And so when it comes to severe weather or heavy rain, heavy snow and wind, this is going to have a bit more structure to it and handle those winds and such than you have with this tent that is going to not have as much strong structure to it. But when you break down even the more finite details of these tents, let's talk about the way that the Vestibule and the Rainfly is designed on this aspect. This is, again, pretty traditional, pretty standard and basic. I've got a single entry here on one side and then another entry on the other. But what I don't necessarily like about this tent that I get the option of with the Dagger is I only can roll back the one side of the door. And that may not seem like a big deal, but oftentimes I want the ability to roll back the doors all the way. And that makes for better ventilation on beautiful days when you're out, so that you have the best living experience in the tent possible. So with this aspect, I cannot roll this door back. It's fixed in that position, and so I am limited in that aspect to having as much ventilation as possible on really nice, beautiful nights. Now obviously I'm going to close this up when I have severe rain and weather and stuff, but having the ability to roll that back would be super nice. Now even here on the Dagger, I've got the ability to not only roll back the door on this side, but even over here, I still got it pinned out, but I could roll that back as well and have it totally wide open. And that makes a big difference in the ability for this tent to provide as much ventilation and living experience as possible. Now I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, backcountry.com. Backcountry has done an amazing job in these crazy times of supply chain issues of making sure that they have as much product available to choose from as possible. And as you're choosing a tent for your backpacking and camping adventures, take advantage of their gearhead service. The gearheads are phenomenal. They are so helpful in making sure that you are finding exactly what you need. So if you have more questions after you watch a bunch of videos on YouTube, you're able to start a chat with those gearheads and say, hey, here is my budget. Here are some of the things that I'm looking for. Can you help me find a tent that matches these needs and these wants that I have out of a backpacking or a camping tent? They're going to provide you with options and suggestions and help you find exactly what you need. And we're also here to help you save some money. If you use my coupon code exposure15, you can save up to 15% on your order. Some exclusions do apply, but it's worth at least trying to save a few bucks, and hope that that helps you find exactly what you need. And thanks to backcountry.com for sponsoring the video today. So we're in the tent for the night. This is now the Mountain Hardwear Aspect 2, and right out the gate, the experience so far being in here together with 2 sleeping pads and everything is a bit tighter than in the Nemo. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that it's not as long or as wide as the Nemo, but also just the dome style traditional design from this tent does reduce the living space a little bit, where the walls come in a bit steeper and you still have a great peak height and everything. But with this, it just is not as great of a living space as compared to the Nemo tent. Still a great shelter. The other aspect in talking about the fine detail things is the pocket selection in this tent is not awesome. So there's a pocket here at this end and at the opposite end, and then here at the top. Otherwise, not a great selection of pockets, so doesn't lend itself to being as convenient and as comfortable as other options out there. So now if we bring another option into the mix here, this is the Sea to Summit Telos TR2 freestanding tent. And this is quite a bit different in design than the Dagger, and especially from the Aspect. This is similar in structure to the Dagger, but they are taking some pretty different approaches with the way that they're providing ventilation into this tent, as well as just the overall performance of it. You'll notice here at the top, you've got this big open vent, which here on the Dagger, you don't even have any kind of vents on the head end or the foot end. And so you've got an apex at the top of the tent here that provides a bunch of ventilation. But one aspect that is very different about this tent than the others is this is a tapered design, meaning that at the head end, you've got a wider end, and then at the foot, it's much more narrow by at least 10 inches. I think it's 52 inches at the head end and 42 inches at the foot end. And so why is that important? Well, this is technically a 2-person tent, but you're going to be more limited in the amount of space that you have in this tent, because I'm not going to be able to use 2 25-inch wide pads inside of this tent. I'm going to be limited to 20-inch wide mummy style or mummy shaped pads, and it's just going to feel a bit more crammed inside of this tent when you've got 2 people in here. Now, as a 1-person tent, any of these options are going to be awesome. They're going to work out super well. But with this Telos as well, you've got the ability, just like on the Dagger, to roll the doors back all the way. But if you notice on this tent, you've got quite a bit more mesh through the one side here. And this is a 2-door, 2-vestibule tent as well. But something that is important about a design like this is when you have this much mesh on here, you've got greater ventilation, right? But compared to like the Nemo, for example, where you've got more of a solid sidewall that's a breathable fabric up through the side of the tent, you're less likely to have as much sand or dirt or even snow drifting under the vestibule in heavy wind and pounding into the inside of the tent. That is a really crazy experience that I had with this particular tent, where I had so much sand blowing inside of the tent that I had literally like 4 handfuls of sand after a full night of sleep inside of here. And I feel like if I had more high sidewall that was a breathable fabric, that may have been mitigated a bit and I could have had a better experience in the tent that night. But that's something to consider as well. Little details of the tent that make a big difference in the overall experience. So I think when it comes down to it, when you are choosing a tent for backpacking and camping, you cannot just make the decision solely based on this is how much money I have to spend, what fits within that realm. Now, it is important to only spend what makes sense for you, but I want you to find the best shelter possible that matches the needs that you have for the types of trips that you're going on. Now, this Dagger, I love this tent so much. I've just really enjoyed the design elements to this that have created a quality experience out on the trail. And so using something like this that is fully featured, I've got pockets all over the place. I've got easy entry and exit in and out of the tent. I've got something that is very roomy and livable for 2 people in the event where I am sharing this tent with 2 people. I've got plenty of vestibule space. I've got this cool little design aspect of this like sidecar area that is able to make it so I keep stuff dry and clean in the vestibule, which is a cool little touch that doesn't add hardly any weight to the tent. I've got something that has plenty of height. It's going to be strong and handle elements of weather just fine. This is a really high quality, good shelter option. But then in terms of the aspect too, this is also a fantastic shelter option as a freestanding tent. This thing is going to perform exactly how you would need it to. It's got a really lightweight material, so the aspect of total weight for this tent is very light. And using this as a 1-person solo option that maximizes the amount of space that you have is really awesome. And so sometimes just really simplifying things can make a big difference in the overall experience. This Nemo Dagger is probably too much as a solo only option that I would use for every single trip. When I am looking for something a bit more simple and not so full featured, then maybe this aspect is going to be a better option for me. But then that's not to forget that there are options like this Sea to Summit Telos out there, plus every other non-freestanding tent that you can get that's on the market right now. There's so many options, and in a lot of cases, you simply can't go wrong in what you choose. For the most part, you can choose the wrong tent and have a miserable experience depending on the conditions that you might be experiencing. But of what I've shown you today for freestanding shelter options in 3-season conditions with mild weather, you've got rain or snow or something that's coming down, and maybe some mild to heavy wind, any of these are going to perform super well and be a great option for that. A non-freestanding tent may be a bit more particular in what you choose for those kinds of situations, depending on the type of ground that you are setting up on and such. But having so many different options, you really need to decide exactly what design elements are most important to you. If you are going to be sharing the tent with 2 people, more common than not, then you need to go with something more like the Dagger that is a symmetrical design. It's the same width at the head end as it is at the foot end, as opposed to this Telos that is a tapered design. Not going to provide as much living space inside of the tent for that reason. But if you are a solo person that's trying to maximize the amount of space that you have in your tent, then going with this shelter here, the Telos from Sea to Summit, may be a great option where you get something that provides a palace of living space, but also is not so big that you have just a bunch of wasted space, and you're able to reduce the weight because of the taper design and everything that you get with this. So this is a great option as well. And so when it comes down to it, make decisions based off of a list of wants and needs in the design aspects that make the most sense to you. Now, if you have questions about any of the shelters that we've talked about today, please leave them down in the comments section. Appreciate you guys watching today. I hope you have an awesome day. We'll catch you in the next video. See you later.